Agutavoch and regards from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, where I've been for the past 24 hours plus. It's gratifying to meet a couple of people who listen to recordings whilst I'm here in Eretz Yisrael. Someone asked me this evening about the timing of the shiur. It's 10 o'clock tonight here in Yerushalayim, so it's just as well I haven't changed it to later. But also, when I get back, we'll look into it, perhaps make it 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock for the moment. Okay, before actually going into the list of questions, Karogil, so we had a very special event this week. It was the first shiur of this new kollel based medrash Iyun Tefillah, which is a series or a whole course of shiurim, meanwhile planned until Rosh Hashanah time, to go through davening. And the first shiur, which was given by myself, was on Birchas Kohanim, and there were over 100 people who had signed up. So 50 of them were live. This is 5 p.m. in London, which means 12 o'clock in New York time. And you had 50 people plus signed in, which I found amazing. And the others will follow with recordings. So for those who are listening just to the audio recording, if you want to join this thing, it's iyuntefillah.com. Iyun is spelled IYUNTEFILLAH.com. So one shiur is on the halachas, which was given by myself. The second shiur by Rabbi Yosef Klein will be about Pirush Hamilas, explaining the words of it, and the breathing in the life of Chassidus into the davening. That's Reb Osher Forkash. So that will be a cycle of 3 shiurim. Okay, having gone through those introductions, so I've been asked whether it's important to have a meaty su'udah for the Purim meal, especially this year, because Purim's on Friday. So then people are asking, they want to have it early in the day, do they have to have fleishiks? So my reaction to him was, you have to have kreplach. The 3 times a year you have kreplach. And one is Shana Rabbeh, one is Erev Yom Kippur, and one is on Purim. My father used to say, Allah Shalom, he would say that you've got 3 times when we're clapped. When you clap al chait, and when you clap hashinus, when you clap Haman. So we have the kreplach. These are all like semi-Yom Tovim. And therefore, you have the meat, which is the celebration of a Yom Tov, is kind of under wraps. There are deeper reasons given for it, but that seems to be the pashut pshat. So kreplach are usually fleishig. But besides that, you have on the screen from Nisei Gavriel saying that it is mitzvah lechel basar, but it's preferable to have fleishigs. And so that's recommended. So person has a big difficulty, I'm sure they'll find a heter, but that's the recommended practice. Let's go on to question number 2. And that is, someone asked about at what age can a young Kohen join his father and brothers, perhaps, in Birchas Kohanim. So let's read the Halocho in Siman Kuf Chov Ches, that's the dinim of Birchas Kohanim, where it says that a child, Koton, afilu hu ben yud gimel shana, if he hasn't produced Beisaris, is not noisy kappa, he shouldn't be duchening on his own. It wouldn't be appropriate for the tzibur to be beholden to a young lad like that. Along with other Kohanim, he would be able to join in, and he says further, afilu eino ben yud gimel shanim, even if he's under 13 years old, but provided that he knows how to Lisoes kapov, to raise his palms in the air, and so then he would be able to join the adult Kohanim, kedelis chanach b'mitzvahs. So there you have, it's very clear that once the little boy is capable of raising his hands in for duchenon, then he is eligible to join his father in front of the shul. Let's move on. So the next question we have is there Torah guidance regarding putting a pet to sleep due to its frail condition? So direct Maarav I wouldn't have. I've seen various sources where they discuss it and saying it is permitted, but I want to share with you the following response which I gave. Hashkocha Protis, I came across this past week, shortly before I was asked this question, I came across a sefer called Masei Hashem. Now, those who love reading may recognize a volume called The Travels of Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, published by Feldheim. I read it about 30 years ago. He was a contemporary of the Ramo, etc. And he wrote a sefer dedicated to the halacha aspects of the stories in the Torah. That's his mandate. So he writes a fascinating pshat. When it says that Hashem creates man, and Hashem first creates a form of man out of earth, clay, and then he says, Nasa Odom b'tzalmenu kidbosenu. He galvanizes all of creation, which was, whether it's the mountains, whether it's the plant life, whether it's the animal life, and he calls them all and he says, Nasa Odom b'tzalmenu kidbosenu. Let us do a joint project of creating this man. And there are various meanings and explanations for this Nasa Odom. And he says the following. He says, Hashem is saying, I'm creating this man, and all of you, your purpose of existence, mountains and trees and animal life, your purpose of existence is to enable this man, which I'm creating, this human, that he should be able to carry out his tachlis, his neshama beguf purpose. And all of you are have been created to facilitate him carrying out his tachlis. So that's the Nasa Odom. Hashem says, you're also part of the team to create this Odom because you're dedicated and committed with all these details for this. So that is the justification for the fact that we use animal life for human benefit, whether it is for eating, whether it is for clothing, etc., because they were created for the Odom. Once they are no longer able to provide whatever the Odom needs from them, then they're not fulfilling a tachlis, and that would justify putting the pet to sleep because of its frail condition. That's just my, hashkofa approach, but I did see numerous contemporary writers who said it is okay, and okay, let's move on. So here's a question. Last Shabbos, when I was in London, someone came over to me and he said that he put up the Shabbos kettle, the Shabbos urn, he put it up with cold water, very close to Shabbos. And into Shabbos, so it boiled. And he asked, was that okay? And was he allowed to have the water from it? So let's explain. Why do we need a blech? The blech is to allow two things. Either the blech allows you to take food off and put it back again, called chazar. That's one benefit we have of a blech. If you have the fire covered, you can take off the cholent Friday night and serve some potatoes and then put back the cholent. Well, then the various conditions, which we just, I think, touched on last week, you have to hold it in your head, it has to be having in mind, etc. That's what the one thing. The other thing is, the blech allows you to put up raw food before Shabbos. Again, because it's a reminder, deterrent, so you can put up raw food before Shabbos, provided you have a blech. If you don't have a blech, you're not allowed to put up raw food. And that's the answer here. In the electric urn, there is no blech. There's no practical way of making a blech in an electrical appliance like an urn, and therefore you're not allowed to put up cold water just before Shabbos comes in. As in a crock pot or a slow cooker, whatever you want to call it, there would be the similar thing, but there you have an eitzah. There you have a solution. You could put a layer of silver foil inside the outer housing, and then you put the ceramic insert in there. So then you've created some kind of blech situation. If you're talking already about a cholent with a crock pot, there's another solution, which instead of having a blech, if you put in a piece of raw meat, then the Gemara says that is also okay, because the concern which they had, that you might be tempted to poke the fire, that it should be ready for supper. But by putting a piece of raw meat, that in itself is a statement. It's not going to be ready for supper in any case, and therefore that's an alternative. You could have if you put in a piece of raw meat just before Shabbos into the cholent or whatever, then you would not need to have a blech. That's an alternative. Okay. So the next one is going to be a little bit complicated, and for me it was a bit of a surprise. And that is, if a Jewish woman conceived a child from a non-Jewish man, so that child is Jewish, yeah? We know that the halacha is, if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. But that child is pogum likahuna. So this you have on the screen from Even HaEzer, Siman Dalet, that if echod mi'elu bo al bas Yisrael, so referred to a goy earlier on in the Siman, if a goy has relations with a bas Yisrael, havalad kosher, elo shepogum likahuna, but that child has a defect in regards to kahuna, which means that lechatchila, the child born from a non-Jewish father and a Jewish mother, that girl should not get married to a Kohen shouldn't marry her, because there is some defect, so to speak. Now, as you see just beneath that, we have a quote. We have the second quote beneath. That's from the Bar Heitev. B'di'eved ein moitziin im niseis lekohen achareinim. So the Bar Heitev quotes from Chelkos Mechoikik and others about Shmuel that b'di'eved, if this young woman whose father is not Jewish and she did get married to a Kohen, so they are allowed to remain married. Okay. Above that, the middle quote, there's from the Be'er HaGoyla, he says they wouldn't be allowed to stay married, but the halacha is generally accepted, as the Be'er Heitev says, that if they were already married, they can stay married. And even more, in the Nesivim B'stei HaShlichas, I quoted from Rav Masas in his Sefer Shalos Shuvas. He was a Rav Sfar Shur of Yerushalayim, and he said even if they are already in a very strong relationship, he would also allow the Kohen to marry this girl whose father isn't Jewish. Okay. The question now is, if this Kohen marries this girl and they have a daughter, does that daughter carry the defect, the pagam, which the mother and the marriage of her parents had? So what we're seeing here on the left, you have a quote from, I think, the Avnei Nezer, was it? That it's if they have a son, that's so. If the Kohen marries this woman, if they have a son, he's a kosher Kohen. But if they have a daughter, then it looks like that the piyam goes over to the next generation. So their daughter would also not be eligible to a Kohen. So if until now I was under the impression, okay, they're not allowed to get married, but if they got married, they're allowed to stay married. I never was aware that there could be repercussions in the next generation. The way I'm looking at it now, particularly I was looking at the Oitzer HaPoskim, and it looks like that the halacha would be that the piyam would go to the next generation, that their daughter shouldn't be allowed to get married to a Kohen. Let's move on to the next question. And that is, people have asked me, there are several instances in the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, in the Chabad Siddur, where it has two nuschos, two versions. It's asking what's the purpose of that? How do we deal with that? Now I'm just going to look at the chats. There's a couple of questions here. Okay. So what at random I came up with three places where we have nusach nun aleph, which stands for nusach acher in the Alter Rebbe Siddur. What you have on the screen is from what we believe to be the earliest print, Shklov Tovkov Samach Gimel. And so the more familiar might be the one in Maariv, Havos Choloi Sosur or Al Tosir, Nusach Acher Al Tosir. Now, what's the difference? Al Tosir is a plea. Your love, do not remove your love from us evermore. Loi Sosur is a statement to say it will not be removed from us forever. So the Loi Sosur is a stronger statement than the Al Tosir, which is a plea. So why the Alter Rebbe put both? And my suggestion is, which I don't have a source for, is it's similar to the idea of Krik Siv, where we have in the Torah many words which are written one way and they're pronounced slightly different or very different. And whenever you have such a situation, you're meant to have in mind both. As when you have Yud Kei Vav Kei and you pronounce it Adni, so it says Shulchan Aruch Siman Hey, you should have in mind both kavonas. You should have in mind Yud Kei Vav Kei, means Hashem was, is, and will be. And you should have in mind Adni, which is the master of the universe. So I'm suggesting that when the Alter Rebbe gives two kavonas, an alternative wording, you should have in mind the other one too. Possibly that's the same with the noavo and the navo. In the Siddur, I brought on the word navo several pirushim, whether it's a lashon of a dwelling or whether it's a lashon of desire, possibly a third pirush also. But the one which I think is worth discussing is in Rabbi Shmuel Oimer. So you've got the 13 midas HaTorah nidreshes bohen, and we have v'chei shnei chesuvim hamachachishim. I might have discussed this in this shiur some time back. I didn't check up now, but this bris of Rabbi Shmuel is the introduction to the Sefer Torah's Kohanim, the bris according to the sequence of Sefer Vayikra, otherwise known as Sifro or Sifro Devei Rav. So at the beginning of that Sefer, it has the 13 midas HaTorah in the Dreshes Bohem. And there it has V'chan Shnei Chesuvim. Now, if you remember the Rashi at the end of Parshas Pekudei, talks about, did Hashem speak to Moshe? Was he inside the oil moed? Did he hear? How did the voice come to Moshe, and why did other people not hear it? A whole discussion in the Rashi, and he says, well, this pasuk seems this way. This pasuk seems this way, and then it says a third pasuk, and it brings the pasuk of Vayikra oil moed, and how he reconciles. So about the way Hashem speaks to Moshe, we've got conflicting sources. And the third pasuk, which is the beginning of Vayikra, reconciles this conflict. So since the bris is the beginning of Vayikra, as I said, it's the bris on Vayikra. It's here we have two psukim, where we have an instance of two psukim, which have been in conflict, and there's a kosev ashlishi, which resolves the conflict. So in the Brisa, in the source, in the beginning of Torah's Kohen and beginning of Sefer Vayikra, V'chan is absolutely correct. But when you take that Brisa and you put it in the beginning of davening, or just before Hoidu, V'chan Shnei Chsuvim does not fit anymore. So therefore, it makes more sense for the reader in the Siddur to read V'chein Shnei Chsuvim, because, yeah, all right, we've had 12 points this far, and this is the 13th point. Why do you need to have V'chein? Why couldn't it just be Shnei Chsuvim like all the rest are just without a V'chein? So, all right, so just to make it smoother for the reader, it's been modified from V'chan to V'chein. Just fairly simple. Once you know what the background, the explanation is fairly simple. Okay, so having dealt with that, now we're going to go to something more complicated. And that is, someone asks me, in the word, in the shiur, we have the word solalu. Is it with a chat of Pasach, or is it with a shava? Now, as you can see on the screen, the top line, the top quote is from the Shklov print, and there it's Tzolalu with a shava. In the middle quote, it's from the Torah Siddur at Shachris Shel Chayil, and there it's got a chat of Pasach. And then in the Torah Siddur, in Shachris of Shabbos, it's got a shava again. No, sorry, it's not so clear. Not so clear. No, it doesn't matter. All right, it's okay. So I want to explain what's going on here, and that is that first of all, there's a difference between a shvo and a shvonach. A shvonach is inaudible; it's not articulated, and a shvono is articulated. There are 4 letters. Sorry, before we get to the 4 letters, when you've got the same letter twice, one after the other, so the first of the 2 has to be audible, otherwise it would be non-existent. If you wouldn't have a shavono, it would be tsolu. So to make it a double lamed, it has to be tsolalu. And the same thing, rananu tzadikim. If it be a shvonach, it would be ranu. So you have to have, when there's 2 of the same letter, one after the other. So the first one has to be a shvona, otherwise it would be non-existent. So in the word solalu, the shvo under, it's assuming it's a shvo, so then it has to be a shvona, not a shvonach. That's a davar hapashut. Now, then another klal. Someone's pointing out koi feres or kai feres. Okay, let's leave that for another time. Now, there are 4 letters which cannot handle a shvo no, and they are the guttural letters aleph, ches, hey, ayin. Those letters can't handle the sound. They're too weak, and therefore they need to have a stronger sound. They need to be broadened a bit. And therefore, the chatofin are created. I'm using the word created. Who made these rules? If they are Halocho Moshe Messinai, I'm not going into that. I'm just saying the need for them in Chochmas HaDikduk. So, aleph, ches, hey, ayin, when it ought to have been a shava, it can't handle a shava, and therefore, there we have the developments of the chatofim. And so you'll have a chat of segel, chat of pasach, or chat of komets. Usually, it's influenced by the letter which is next to it, like v'ne'emar. So because the nun is a segel, so then v'ne'emar, the aleph also is a chat of segel, and so on. Ma'amor, so ahavo. So the hey is a chat of pasach. So it's influenced by the pasach of the aleph. So then the chataf on the hey becomes is a chat of Pasach rather than another chat of. Okay, so that's the rule. The real chatofin only belong under the four letters Aleph Ches Hey Ayin. There's no need and no place for chatofim in any other letter. So then, if you see a siddur or a chumash, borachu, Yitzchok, Esav says to his father, "Havarocho achas hilocho ovi," and usadei migrash orehem, and so on. Those are not genuine chatofim. They shouldn't be pronounced as chatofim. So why are they there? Why am I arguing with the whole world now? We've got all of these places, as I say, Rananu, etc. As a side comment, I gave a couple of talks here about the new Siddur, and just going through the history. Our Rebbe, arrived in America, Chof Ches Sivan Tovshin Aleph. The new Torah Siddur was published by Rosh Hashanah of Tovshin Beis. So he got off the boat and got straight to work on getting that Siddur ready for print. And we have, about 10, 12 years ago, was published the notes of the Rebbe, which he wrote for himself, to ask the Frierdiker Rebbe or to look into himself when he was editing those Siddurim. And so there are a lot of questions of the Rebbe, like on the word Rananu, Borachu, and so on. A lot of these chatofin, which are not under the letters Aha, Aleph Ches Ayin, and the Rebbe questions them. So I'm just telling you what, according to generally accepted diktuk rules, they don't belong there. So why are they there? So the answer is that they are there to tell you that this is not a shvonach, but a shvona. So looking at the word solalu over here, that chatof is really a shvona. So why do they put a chatof there? Well, that was before the printer in Vilna invented to put a star, an asterisk on top of the letter. Now, what I found though fascinating is that even going back to the Radak, etc., and that time, going back hundreds of years, it looks like that the shvoin, the shvo no wasn't pronounced in a uniform way. Sometimes the shvo no was closer to a pasach, sometimes it was closer to a segel, etc. When it has to be a shvo no, it wasn't always the same sound as we do it. It was a variety, and it was for this reason that some of the copyists, etc., when they wrote over text, they wanted to indicate which type of shvo no is it going to be? Is it going to be more a sound or more a sound or more a sound? And therefore they added not just to shvo, they expanded it. It's this type of shvo no. Nowadays we don't have that difference. All shvo in noin we pronounce just and therefore this becomes really misleading. More than just obsolete, it's bosh misleading. Now, how do I get all of this amazing information? So, what's called outsourcing. I have my diktuk consultant, and I asked him for some sources about this, and he sends me. This is part of an article. Let's try to get something out of it. Now, what have I told you now? I've told you that the real chatofin are only on the guttural letters, and anything else is not a real chatof. That's what I've dismissed the validity of the chatofin on non-guttural letters. That's what I've done. So now I'm showing here on the screen where he shows the following to prove this point, to support this point. Fascinating. And he's saying the following. You see that the letter before the guttural letter will influence the chatof, which follows it. So you have, let's say, ba'asher. So the pasach over the base influences the aleph to be a chatof pasach. And then we have, let's say, a word onios, which is boats or ships. Bo-onios. So why is it chatof comets? Because it's preceded by a chatof base. So it's bo-onios, ko-onios, etc. That's because the guttural letters, that chatof is influenced by the letter before it. But let's take a look at the other non-guttural letters, which have what's ostensibly a chatof. Uzahav ha'oretz ha'hitoy, usadei migrash oreim, ushamo, usagoir. Now, there you see that the preceding vav is a u sound, and it's followed by a pachatov. There seems to be no influence of one over the other. The answer is because it's not a real chatov, it's just a shvur. That's basically the theory which is presenting, or the proof which is presenting. So B'kitzur, having said what I've just said, it remains that it should be solalu, not solalu, and so on. Rananu, not rananu, and borachu, not borachu, and so on. Right. For that, I hope that's come across as clear, but it's the best I could do. Okay, so here we have, looks like we're going to have a shorter shiur tonight, but that's okay. It's quite late here in Yerushalayim. So a woman washed Netilas Yadayim, and only afterwards did she realize that she had forgotten to remove her ring. So does she have to wash Netilas Yadayim again? And then the next question is, if yes, does she need to make a bracha? So the concept of chatzitza, I know it's going to be a little bit dangerous, but okay, Baruch Hashem, we're learning, and it's okay to. So the concept of chatzitza means it's an undesired presence, and therefore it's an interruption between the water and the skin. If it's a desired presence, then it's not really a chatzitza. So now, why is a woman's ring considered an undesired presence? And therefore chatzitza. She wants to wear the ring. So generally the way it's brought in poskim, and I think it's even in the Gemara, that when a woman kneads dough, it's as asking for a husband, and she shouldn't do that on Motzei Shabbos. So when she's making her challahs, she would slip off her ring and work with her hands without her getting her ring covered with dough. Nowadays, it's probably true to say that most women don't do that kind of stuff. Working with kneading dough with their hands. Even those who do make challahs, Baruch Hashem, a lot of us have these mixing machines which will make the dough for you. And the whole avoid of with clenching your fists and pushing into the dough has become more a minority than a majority of women, and especially nowadays things are available to buy, etc. So the whole concept of a woman regularly kneading dough is certainly not a rov. It's quite a miut today, and then because of that, there's room to say that the leaving the ring in place is not a chatzitza. But the evidence, for sure, when we should take off her ring, but the evidence is not a chatzitza, and therefore the Netilas Yadayim was valid. There's a little bit of a question here, though, and we have discussed this in the past. What's the story if a person is wearing a bandage or a plaster in regard to Netilas Yadayim? So here's where the problem arises. We have a minimum of Maim Rishonim and Maim Shneim. What Chabad do is a third netila, a third washing. That's a Lifnim Mishur Sadin. But there is Maim Rishonim on Metaher the hand, but that water remains tummy. You wash a second time, the Maim Shneim on Metaher the Maim Rishonim. only the Mayim Rishonim which are on the hand, but not Mayim Rishonim anywhere else. So when you wash Mayim Rishonim, and some of it spilt onto the bandage, then you do Mayim Shniyim, and the Mayim Shniyim are not mataher the residue of water which is on the plaster, because it's not aliyad. So it can't be, then the water which is on the plaster trickles back to the hands. It's Mayim to Mayim, it's being mataher by the hand again. So that's where we have a problem, and the same thing with the ring. The Mayim Rishonim will have made their way onto the ring, and then the Mayim Shniyim are not mataher that bit of water which is on the ring. So what's the way round with it? So in Shulchan Aruch is brought an eitzah that it's true we have this problem of water becoming tamei, but if you use a revius of water, then it's going to be immune to tumah. So when you pour Netilas Yadayim with a generous amount of a revius, which is not huge, so then the water doesn't become tamei, and then this whole business of the Mayim Rishonim, Mayim Shniyim, etc., becomes a non-issue. This is a machlokes tanoim. In the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, he quotes Rabbi Yossi, who holds that a revius also becomes tamei. And according to that, a bandage situation will not have a simple solution. And the same thing with the case with the ring. It would, even b'diavad would be a problem. But that's really the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, who says the revius doesn't become tamei. It's only that we are machmir lechatchila like Rabbi Yossi, that even a revius is not immune to tumah. So coming back to our question, she washed Netilas Yadayim with a ring in place, and assuming that she used a generous amount of water. So then the Netilas Yadayim is valid according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yossi it's not, but b'diavad we're going to rely on the Ikar Hadin, like Rabbi Yehuda, and so the Netila is valid. If she wants to wash again, Tova Aleha Brocha, but she certainly should not make a brocha on the washing again, because the first one was also valid. Let's go on to a question which came up just very close to Shabbos, on Friday, perhaps Thursday. And that is that a shliach says the following: there's a young lad who's turning BarMitzva, and whoever prepared him for his BarMitzva, and when they were preparing the celebration of the BarMitzva, they miscalculated, and he's actually going to be BarMitzva 3 days after the day where, what says on the invitations, where he's going to be reading the parasha in shul. And typically it's the kind of child you can't really, in the last minute, now start teaching him another parasha, and the invitations have been sent out, the caterers, all the zachem. It's, so here's the question: can you somehow find some heter for a boy to read from the Torah before he's turned BarMitzva? I remember years ago, there was a boy in our school here in London who used to go, who was a Taimani boy. And in the Taimani shul, he would often do laning at 7 years old, 8 years old. When I was teaching his class, any pasuk in Chumash, he would be able to rattle off, because he would have practiced. I've got a couple also. But he was and by the time when it's accepted that a boy 7 years old, could also be laning the pasuk from the Torah. Now, what we have in front of us is from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, if I'm not mistaken, it's Siman Reish Pei Beis, where he says the following: Hakoil oilin mitztaref leminyan shiva kruim v'Shabbos. The quota of 7 aliyahs, 7 honorees to be called up to the Torah. So all are able to make up that quota, even Isha v'Koton, if the cotton is Yodei Alamim Evorachim, if he understands the Eivishter, etc. So then he would be able to make up the quota of 7 aliyahs, even if he's not mechuyev. Afal pi she'eino mechuyev b'dav, neither the Isha or the cotton are mechuyavim b'dav. Chacham said that Isha lo yisikra b'tzibur mipnei kvodat tzibur. And then afilu koton eine oile. All right, that's it. Then in the next seif, sorry, in seif Zion says va'achshov einoi hagin likros koton el lahamaftir. Nowadays, it's been phased out, this giving a koton to have an aliyah, but he says on the level of minhag, yeah? Einoi hagin likros koton el lahamaftir. For whatever the reason was, this was phased out. Now, I remember a friend of mine who lived in Paris. His father was a chazan, very chassidish Yid, and he, under BarMitzva, at 11 years old, he was laning regularly in that shul. It was a Sephardish shul, but he was laning regularly, and he told me that his father told him that back in Russia it was quite common that an under BarMitzva boy would be given the chance or whatever. Perhaps they saw it as a way of survival, whatever it may be, of encouraging him to be Bali Kriya at a younger age. I'm not sure what the reason was, but he said his father told him that it was done in Russia. Now, I'm not suggesting that we change what's done now. I'm just dealing with a shasat chak, a b'diavad kind of a situation where it's going to be very, very awkward to change things. And so there is room to be made. That was the question, the wording of the shliach. Is there room to be makel for the boy to lane before he's actually BarMitzva? And the answer is yes, there is room. And what you have on the bottom left of the screen is from the Piskei Teshuvos, where he writes that the child should not be, I think that's back in Kuf Lamed Hey, where he says a child should not be the Bal Koreh, but if there's no one else who can read besides the cotton, so he says, so if push comes to shove, there is room to be makel. And so, yes, there is a heter to allow an under BarMitzva to lane and where there's really a shasat chak. Right. Finally is that we have been discussing a little bit of Chabad Shabbos recently, and I heard from Rabbi Lu that Tovshin Yud Ches was by Yud Shvat was on a Friday, and the Rebbe would say a Baim Babos Legani on Yud Shvat. So in the year Tovshin Yud Ches and Tovshin Chav Aleph and Tovshin Chav Daled, the Rebbe said the Maimer Friday evening, and he started L'chuneranino until after the Kaddish, after Mizmor Shir and Hashem Malach, and then the Rebbe moved over from his davening place, and he turned around to the Tzibur, and he chazed a Maimer. He said a Maimer, and after that they continued Al Kagavno with Baruch Hu, and they went into Maariv. Now that's something which I never saw. I knew it existed, and in the Siddur, where in this the relevant point, I have a note that back in Tov Kuf Lamed Dalet, when it was the first yortzeit of the Mezritch Magid, and several of the Talmidim came together in Mezritch, and it describes there how this one was the chazan for Kabbalah Shabbos, and this one chazan a Torah. Then after that, this one was the chazan for Maariv, and so it was done there. Occasionally, it looks like this. So it looks like sometimes it was done also by the Rebbe Rashab, and but this was the question: why generally was the Seder in this? Now, what you have on the screen. After I heard this from Rabbi Lu, I thought, well, that's amazing stuff. But then actually, there's a volume called Orchos Menachem, which is a precursor to the Halichos Menachem. Halichos Menachem covers the Seder from first part of Erech Chaim on the day-to-day thing. It doesn't cover for Shabbos, but the Orchos Menachem has a section of the Rebbe's Minhagim over Shabbos. So he quotes this thing, and out there the editor says that the fact that the Maimer was said between Kabbalah Shabbos and Maariv before Kagavno, but earlier he had quoted from the Reb Chaim Noach Shulchan, where he had around Tofresh I and something. He had visited from Eretz Yisrael to Lubavitch in Russia, and he describes how the Rebbe Rashab said the Maimer after Mincha before Kabbalah Shabbos. And so it looks like the Rebbe Rashab did not have this interrupting between Kabbalah Shabbos and Maariv. He would say the Maimer after Mincha, and then the Rebbe Rashab could say a Maimer for an hour and a half. The Rebbe would say the Maimer in a loud voice, a very commanding voice, and the Frierdiker Rebbe also. That's what I heard from people. But anyway, it was before Kabbalah Shabbos. It is a bit questionable why you're doing Kabbalah Shabbos 2 hours into Shabbos, but that's a side issue. That was done. So why here did the Rebbe say the Maimer after Kabbalah Shabbos before Maariv? That was my question. So my suggestion to this is the following, that when there's a yortzeit on a Friday, so you can see at the bottom, there's a quote here from Sefer HaMinhagim, that when someone has a yortzeit on a Friday, he should say the Kaddish after Mizmer Shir Yom HaShabbos. The Kaddish before Kagavno is said by the yortzeit man from Friday. So what that means is that the Friday is still continuing until Kagavno, so to speak. It still belongs to the Friday. Of course, the source is because people used to daven Kabbalah Shabbos earlier, but that remains the minhag, that the Kaddish of after Mizmer Shir before Kagavno belongs or is said by whoever had a yortzeit on Friday. If that's the case, my suggestion is, if although generally the Rebbe Rashab said it the Maimer before Kabbalah Shabbos, but here Yud Shvat, which is the yortzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, is on a Friday, and the Rebbe wants to chaparein to say the Maimer and the Kaddish, etc. To say the Kaddish, sorry. To say the Kaddish, which is relating to the yortzeit, to say it as close to the yortzeit as possible. And therefore, as soon as possible, they say until Mizmer Shir says the Kaddish close after the Shabbos has come in, and that Kaddish belongs to the Friday. And then he says the Maimer, which also belongs to the Friday. And then he goes into, after that, they resume to say Kagavno and go into Maariv. Someone's pointing out that in Ger there is, I knew that in Ger they have this minhag every Shabbos. They have a pause for learning between Kabbalah Shabbos and Kagavno. Okay, and, each Rebbe introduces what's appropriate for his Kehillah. So that's what I have to share with you this evening, and I wish you a gute Woche, and we should hear Sodas Teves. Here the Olam were on Friday morning, where Molly Hispilus, the Grace and Nissim. I'm sure you heard about the buses which had explosives in them, and they exploded without any, so to speak, in the right time when there's no passengers there, and tremendous Hatzalah, and there's seen Grace and Nissim. At the same time, we're waiting for not Grace and Nissim. We should see the Frierdiker Rebbe would say, "Ein Yeshua ad Abarechte." We should see a Geula Shlema with Mashiach Tzidkenu in Eino Sechazena. Also.
Koyach.